In the shadowed world of military operations, where silence is often more powerful than gunfire, one name carries a mystique unlike any other: Delta Force. For decades, this unit has existed in the quiet margins of warfare, where missions are whispered about but rarely confirmed, where victories go uncelebrated, and failures vanish into classified files. To speak of Delta Force is to enter a realm of secrecy and sacrifice, of men chosen not just for their strength or skill, but for their ability to disappear into the fog of war and return as ghosts with unfinished stories. This is not just a special operations unit, it is America's most secretive weapon. A shadow army born in the aftermath of failure, honed in the fires of global conflict, and revered as the silent tip of the spear. The story of Delta Force begins not on the battlefield, but in the aftermath of one. In the 1970s, the world witnessed a wave of hijackings, hostage crises, and acts of terrorism that revealed a sobering truth. Even the mightiest militaries on Earth were ill-prepared for a new kind of enemy. In 1972, the world held its breath during the Munich Olympics, when terrorists stormed the athletes' village and murdered Israeli athletes, while German police floundered without a specialized response team. The images of chaos and tragedy reverberated across the globe. Among those who watched was a Green Beret officer named Charles Beckwith, a man with both the experience of Vietnam behind him and a vision of what America's future needed. Beckwith had once served as an exchange officer with Britain's elite Special Air Service, the SAS. He had seen firsthand how they trained, how they operated with precision, intelligence, and adaptability. He returned to the United States convinced that America needed its own counterpart, a small unit that could move quickly, strike silently, and carry out missions that were too sensitive, too complex, and too dangerous for conventional forces. Yet his calls were met with skepticism. The U.S. military, vast and traditional, was not quick to embrace unconventional ideas. Beckwith, however, was not a man to be ignored. By 1977, the tides began to shift. The growing threat of terrorism demanded a response, and Beckwith was finally given the green light to build his dream unit. From Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Delta Force was born, but it was not created overnight. The selection process Beckwith envisioned was brutal, designed not only to test physical endurance, but mental resilience. Men were pushed through punishing marches, deprived of sleep, burdened with impossible navigation tasks, and tested in ways designed to break all but the most extraordinary. Many of these soldiers were already elite in their own right, Rangers, Green Berets, paratroopers, but in Delta, they discovered that excellence was only the entry point. Those who remained emerged, changed, forged into something that transcended the uniform. They were not just soldiers anymore. They were operators, specialists in counter-terrorism, hostage rescue, reconnaissance, and direct action. The world would not wait long to test them. In 1979, when Iranian militants stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took dozens of Americans hostage, President Jimmy Carter called upon Beckwith's Delta Force for a daring rescue mission. Operation Eagle Claw would be their baptism by fire, a mission that carried the hopes of a nation. But as the world would soon see, not every story of Delta Force would end in triumph. The operation was plagued with mechanical failures, desert sandstorms, and misfortune that culminated in a tragic crash that killed 8 American servicemen before Delta could even reach the embassy. For many, it was a national humiliation. For Delta Force, it was a painful but formative lesson. From the ashes of failure came hard-won knowledge that would sharpen the unit into what it would become: relentless, adaptable, uncompromising. Over the years, Delta Force began to take shape, not as an experimental idea, but as a cornerstone of America's most sensitive operations. In the shadows of Lebanon, Grenada, Panama, and Somalia, Delta men found themselves on missions that would rarely make the news, yet would alter the course of events behind the scenes. In Grenada in 1983, they spearheaded operations to rescue American medical students. In Panama in 1989, they were among the forces hunting Manuel Noriega, the dictator whose capture would reshape U.S. influence in the region. And in the dust and confusion of Mogadishu in 1993, they fought in what would later be immortalized as Black Hawk Down, a battle that tested their resolve and claimed the lives of comrades in a ferocious urban firefight. While the public saw images of burning helicopters and bloody streets, those who knew Delta understood that they had held their ground with courage against overwhelming odds. Yet perhaps the truest measure of Delta's impact is not in the battles we know about, but in the countless ones we never will. Operating in small surgical teams, their missions are often so classified that even within the Pentagon, only a handful of officials are fully briefed. These are the men called upon when a terrorist must be captured, when a hostage must be rescued from the heart of enemy territory, or when intelligence must be gathered where no spy dare go. To understand Delta is to understand silence. They leave no traces, no fanfare, only ripples in the shadows of history. In the years after 9/11, Delta Force was thrust onto the front lines of a new kind of war. As America declared its global war on terror, Delta became one of the most heavily relied upon units in the hunt for Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. They deployed to Afghanistan, often slipping into the rugged mountains to track high-value targets with an intensity and focus that set them apart. They worked hand-in-hand with CIA operatives, blending intelligence and direct action into a seamless campaign. In Iraq, they played pivotal roles in some of the most critical missions of the war. It was Delta operators who, alongside Navy SEALs and other special forces, hunted Saddam Hussein, capturing the dictator in December 2003 as he hid in a spider hole outside Tikrit. They relentlessly pursued Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, the ruthless al-Qaeda leader in Iraq, who was killed in a precision airstrike in 2006 after intelligence gathered by Delta operators pinpointed his location. These were victories that resonated far beyond the battlefield, reshaping the course of the war and America's struggle against insurgency. What makes Delta Force unique is not only their ability to fight, but their ability to blend. Unlike conventional soldiers, they are trained to disappear into civilian life, to move through foreign streets unnoticed, to speak languages, and adopt disguises, to enter a city as shadows and leave as ghosts. They are trained to think like terrorists, to anticipate their moves, to dismantle networks from within. For every mission that ends in gunfire, countless others end quietly, with information gathered, a plot foiled, a target captured without a shot fired. This duality, the warrior and the ghost, defines the Delta operator. Yet beneath the mystique lies a heavy burden. These men live in the margins of recognition. Their victories are often buried in classified files, their failures magnified in silence. The price they pay is not only in the risks they take, but in the lives they return to after the mission is over. Many live with the weight of secrets they cannot share, with scars both visible and unseen. For every successful hostage rescue, there is the memory of one that came too late. For every enemy neutralized, there is the haunting face of comrades lost. In the quiet suburbs of America, they live anonymous lives, blending back into society as fathers, neighbors, co-workers, while carrying the invisible shadow of who they truly are. Delta Force's training remains one of the most grueling in the world. Candidates are drawn from the very best of America's military, often Green Berets, Rangers, or other special operations forces, but only a small fraction make it through selection. The process is designed not to measure what a man has already achieved, but to strip him down to his essence. Long marches through desolate terrain, psychological tests, decision-making under duress, all serve one purpose: to reveal not just strength, but character. Because Delta does not seek the loudest warrior, but the quietest professional, the one who will endure when the body screams to quit, the one who will make the right choice when no one is watching. It is said that Delta does not recruit men who want to be heroes, but men who can shoulder the burden of history without needing recognition. Their motto, though rarely spoken aloud, encapsulates this spirit: to be silent professionals. Over the decades, Delta Force has remained deliberately obscure. Unlike the Navy SEALs, whose exploits have been celebrated in books and films, Delta has cultivated an aura of invisibility. Few outside the unit even know the names of its leaders or the identities of its operators. Their victories are America's, but their names are forgotten by design. This secrecy is not just for protection, It is the essence of their existence. In the world of counter-terrorism and covert warfare, anonymity is as vital as firepower, and yet their influence is undeniable. When hostages are taken in distant lands, it is often Delta who quietly deploys, slipping into unknown terrain to bring Americans home. When intelligence points to a terrorist plot, it is often Delta who intervenes before the headlines ever break. When America needs a weapon of precision, not destruction, it is Delta who answers the call. The unit's operations are scattered across the globe: Somalia, Bosnia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, always moving, always hidden, always vital. The men of Delta are not superheroes. They are human beings who have chosen a life of extraordinary risk and extraordinary anonymity. They carry the same fears, the same doubts, the same longing for home as any soldier. But what sets them apart is the choice to go again and again into the unknown, into the shadows, knowing that their sacrifices may never be recognized, their victories never celebrated, their names never spoken. They embody the paradox of the ultimate warrior, indispensable to history, invisible to memory. Delta Force is more than a military unit. It is a symbol of what America demands, when silence must become strength, when shadows must turn into shields. Its legacy is written not in parades or medals, but in the lives saved, the threats dismantled, the unseen victories that have kept countless nights free of terror. It is a story of men who will never tell their stories, of missions that will never be revealed, of sacrifices that will never be fully understood. And it is a reminder that sometimes the greatest battles are fought not in the light of glory, but in the dark silence of secrecy. Delta Force remains America's most secret unit, a force that exists between myth and reality, between what we know and what we will never know. In a world that continues to evolve with new threats and new challenges, their mission endures as it always has: to go where no one else can, to do what no one else will, and to carry the burden of silence for a nation that sleeps in peace. They are the quiet warriors of history, the ghosts in the storm, the men whose names we may never know, but whose shadows have shaped the destiny of a nation. And so, when the world asks who will stand in the darkness, America answers with Delta Force.